FMTV.
Greetings, my name is Dwight Mutonono. We are talking about Christianity and democracy. This is the fourth in the series, and today I want to talk about what seems to work best in terms of governance systems. How best do governance systems work? There's a principle, a biblical principle, which you can look at and see from different portions of Scripture, which seems to indicate that government works best with the consent of those who are governed. You see, if those who are led do not consent and do not agree that they should be led in this way, you then will have a problem of the followers not wanting to go the direction that the leader chooses. I'll give a few examples from the Bible of some of these, or of instances when the consent of the people was sought. In Exodus, we find that when God spoke to Moses and told him to go and lead the nation of Israel, he actually went back to the elders to get their consent or to present himself to the elders. In Exodus chapter 4, verse 29 to 31, it says, "Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the people of Israel. Aaron spoke all the words that the Lord had spoken to Moses and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads and worshipped." So that's the first instance of God having spoken directly to Moses, but before he just goes, he makes sure that he presents himself to the elders, and so that he would have the consent of the elders and even the people that he was going to lead. We see the same sort of principle in the book of Samuel, the first book of Samuel, where God appoints Samuel as a prophet, but there was a consent of the people and even an acknowledgement of the people that Samuel was indeed a prophet. If we read 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 19 to 20, "And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established as a prophet of the Lord." So there's a process in which the nation heard Samuel and allowed him to prophesy, and then after some time they agreed that there was a prophet amongst them. So the consent of the people is sought in that instance. Generally, if we are talking about church governance, the way in which we lead churches, the best methods of governance are those that will, in some way, in fact, all forms of church governance, though the methods differ, they must seek some agreement that the leaders are legitimate and suitable for the task at hand. Otherwise, the followers will not follow it. So whatever way in which the leaders are chosen, it works better when those led accept and consent to follow the leaders that they are given. And in some churches, they even give power to the congregation to choose their leaders. There are different forms of church governance, as I said, and those kinds of churches will argue that there's biblical precedence to what they're doing. They will go to Acts chapter 6, where the apostles actually gave the responsibility of choosing deacons to the church. They said, choose for yourselves leaders, and they gave the criterion on which those leaders are to be chosen. Those same churches will argue that when Paul gave the responsibility of appointing leaders to Timothy and to Titus, and the qualifications of those leaders, that kind of, or the qualifications would require a group effort in some ways to be able to determine that this is a suitable leader. So there is some sort of consent of some group before a leader can be chosen. And even, when we look, again, I want to go back to the Old Testament. When Rehoboam, the king, failed to listen to the people, this is now in a monarchy situation, they chose to go with Jeroboam. This is the book of 1 Kings chapter 12. They actually made a decision. And this was something that God had done. He actually had given 10 tribes to Jeroboam. So the people chose to go with Jeroboam, and this was in line with what God wanted. So the consent of those who are governed is an important element in the indirect biblical support for democracy. And so thanks. We'll go into the next session, and we'll talk about the design, the king that God would actually approve of, or the kind of leader that God approved of. Thank you.